All right. Well, okay, good to go. I'm getting the good to go. Amazing. So yes, welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm super excited about it. Very, very cool topic. I'm going to get into introducing our speaker today, which we have a very big honor of having. I wanted to really actually, before I do that, is introduce myself because I'm new and I haven't probably had a chance to meet all of you, although I've been at a number of golf tournaments. This is my life now. But anyways, my name is Anita Holtman. I am the new trainer, director of industry training for Supply Build Canada. So things like this, webinars are near and dear to my heart. So I'm finally excited to start jumping on and being a part of these and to continue to bring these to you depending on what it is that you want or need. I can't wait to do more work with you on this. So thank you so much for being here today. We're very happy to have you. I'm going to speak a little bit about our speaker today. So we have Ian Trump with us today. Ian has more than 30 years in intelligent analysis, cyber threat intelligence, and information security leadership, including 17 years of Canadian military service. So quite a rap sheet in front of us here. He serves as a fractional chief information security officer. That is a mouthful, by the way, Ian, at Inversion6, and works with clients in manufacturing and other sectors across Canada, the UK, and Europe. So we are not doubting his credentials. He comes with a lot. So very excited about that and full respect. Ian has built this session specifically for the Canadian businesses. So talking our talk. He'll walk us through the threat picture facing companies, our member size, what a practical approach to security looks like day to day, and what all of this is worth to the business in dollar terms. For our members, this is more than an IT conversation. As you know, our industry runs on connected systems and on relationships with suppliers and customers, and a disruption doesn't stay in the server room. It shows up in stop shipments, delayed payments, and questions from your customers. Many member companies are also working with lean IT support. I have full respect for that. I get that. I feel like we have that here too, which makes knowing where to focus that much more important. So we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. But again, this is Ian's show, so I'm sure if in the middle of something you want to ask him something, I say go for it because we're here to learn from him. So please don't be shy. Please take the chance to have this human in front of you who can help you with these things. And I'm just so excited to hear this presentation. So Ian, it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and a huge shout out to the team, Supply Build. You guys are doing some great stuff. I'm just going to get set up here, and hopefully you should be able to see my screen. Yes? No, not the right screen. Let me stop sharing here and get you on the right screen here. So sharing button, and then this one. And then shrink. There we go. Okay, glad that that's sorted. So yes, not to sort of repeat what has already been said, but the bottom line now is that security really is a condition of doing business. It's a condition of selling online or offline, and it's a condition of interacting with your customers. You guys probably know how frustrating it is when there's an email outage. And all of those things are sort of related to this presentation and what you can do about the bad guys. And yeah, I'm not going to recap my resume, but this is the kind of placeholder slide that I like to use here. Basically, the bottom line is I've been following this stuff quite closely for a real long time. I think what's really important, though, is staying on top of what the bad guys are doing and when the next sort of type of attack is going to unfold. and what we can do to protect ourselves from it. And in some breaking news out of Australia this morning, 2 members of Team PCP, a notorious supply chain malware group, were arrested. So, this is very, very timely. And that goes back to a key point that I'll make throughout this is it's really important. I know it sounds, like we're just, going through the motions in a lot of cases, but it's really important to report cybercrime. Because the crime that you have suffered is likely to have been suffered by other people, and there may be an opportunity to bring those individuals to justice. And I've seen this play out on numerous occasions, including with the notorious Scattered Spider Gang, which had a massive impact, multi-millions of dollars over the summer of 2025. So we're going to kind of go through sort of 3 phases of this, right? One is really talking about the threat landscape. So what is happening? What is going out there? And what are some of the other things that might be on the radar of your business from a resiliency perspective? The bottom line is a cybercrime activity can be as existential as a giant forest fire that burns down your physical premise. So thinking about that in those contexts, I think is really, really important. And then, of course, due to the geopolitical realities that we live in, with a somewhat unreliable next door neighbor, we are truly in what's called gray zone warfare. And we'll define that a little bit more. But the focus of this is really on cybercrime and what you can do to prevent cybercrime. Then in part 2, we're going to talk about cyber safety culture and leading to business resilience. Listen, we've been, a country that has legislated and demanded workplace health and safety. We're really advanced when it comes to that. We're not so advanced when it comes to cyber safety. And I think we can learn a lot from all of this stuff that has happened in workplace health and safety and sort of apply at least the philosophy, if not the controls. The next part of it is going to be really exciting because this is the big wins part. What does winning against the bad guys really mean in terms of bottom line, and how it can enable your business? So that's what I have in store for you today. And yeah, let's kick off with the threat landscape. So one of the biggest problems with Canada and the Canadian government, and I know we can talk about that at length, is we're not counting. What do I mean by that? Well, Statistics Canada, in their last release, the data that we have is from 2023. So it's been 6 years, right? And a lot of things have happened. And I think one of the issues right here is without good data at the government level, the government doesn't really know kind of what the state of affairs is for businesses on the ground. And I'm going to get into those numbers a little bit as well, because I think it's really important to understand what is actually being reported and what is sort of buried under the covers. Now, a lovely report came out from the Communications Security Establishment, CSE, as it's known as, Canada's equivalent of the NSA or GCHQ in the UK. And they talked about the cyber incidences that they have responded to. Now, again, getting on the radar of the Communications Security Establishment is going to be a pretty high bar, right? So they are not going to be interested in activity that is sort of at a lower level of the spectrum in terms of businesses, in terms of business impacts. So again, although this is a great step in the right direction, it is not helping the man on the street or the businesses on the street, as it were. Okay. So again, though, we do have some insight based on what they put in their report, and we can see that 7 in 10 businesses learned from the government that they had been breached. So they had no idea that there had been a breach situation, and the government actually called them and said, hey, mate, you've got a problem. We found your data, or we know of a cybercrime group that has your data. So this is not good in so many different ways. And it really puts us at a disadvantage when we're waiting for the government to let us know that our businesses have been breached. That's not good news at all. Now, one of the things that did come out of this particular report, which is, I think, really pertinent and really accurate, is the amount of money that's being spent on recovery versus prevention, right? And what's interesting is that spending trends are doubling, and what we're seeing is small businesses accounted for $2.6 billion of a spend of 11 billion, right? We just have to try and make sure that we're spending that money in the right part. And that is exactly what this presentation is going to endeavor to do. Was there a question there? I just saw something flash up on the screen.
No, just someone who just joined. You're good,
Oh,
Ian.
okay, great. Okay, fantastic. So, we have also a bit of a problem with the data, and now is a really good time to get into it, okay? So, 66% of Canadian businesses are confident they could withstand a data breach or a website shutdown. Okay, all right. That seems overly optimistic. 47% say the business is actually prepared for one. So we've got 50% preparedness. Well, to be fair, this is an Insurance Bureau of Canada Angus Reid survey. All right. So let's contextualize it. What does that actually mean? Well, it's from the decision makers at firms of up to 500 employees. Those are ones actually carrying insurance for cyber for cyber attacks. So to be fair, I think this number is really biased because you're not going to get a cyber insurance policy now without doing a bunch of work in cybersecurity in order to achieve the insurance at a reasonable amount for your organization. So again, we have this great number, but I think that number is really, really soft. And I also feel that one of the other problems that we have is, again, we're talking about any business below 10 employees isn't on the radar and isn't being reported. So here the other problem is we have a massive cybercrime driven fraud issue. And again, the only folks with some data on that are the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses, right? Who is saying half of small business owners are actually have suffered an attempted or successful fraud with a mean cost of 7,800. Now, 7,800 is average, but again, it should be it should be not taken as a typical loss, because I've seen some losses in the tens of thousands of dollars. I've also seen some losses in very low dollar figures. 7,800 is probably not existential to the majority of small and medium businesses, but it does represent a amount of money that, when transferred over to another country, can have significantly more value because of the Canadian dollar. And in fact, the Canadian dollar does give us some protection from cybercrime crews because they're really after US dollars or euros or pounds, especially in the UK, because those currencies are considerably more valuable. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can just ignore it because, we're not a high priority target. I think it's safe to say everyone is a target. And that's what the information that we have kind of indicates. Now, we do have a massive scams and fraud issue. And again, our data is really dated on this. The last data that we have is from 2024, which would mean from the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, that would be 2023 data. But we do have some companies that, like Microsoft, for instance, is doing a great job of getting a little bit more data about what is going on in terms of cybercrime broken out by countries. There are a number of different ways to look at it. But I would say that ransomware and data extortion attacks are sort of the new go-to tactic, and no business is too small. as far as they're concerned. And if they can understand whether or not you have cyber insurance or business interruption insurance that will pay, then they are very interested in getting at your particular business and organization. So in some senses, the larger the Canadian business is, the more likely it is to encounter a sophisticated cyber criminal actor who is after a ransomware payment or a data extortion attack. Because we can't forget about PIPDA and the importance of safeguarding our personal and private information. I think the other sort of takeaway from this, and you guys will get the slides, so you don't have to, screenshot or take all of this down. I think one of the most important things, though, now is seeing that the trends that are going on in the United States in terms of the top areas that are getting cyber attacked translate over into Canada quite easily. We're talking about healthcare, pharmaceutical, transport. Those type of organizations are certainly in the bracket of being highly targeted by cyber criminal organizations. Okay, so again, the geopolitical world that we live in is causing a great deal of cybersecurity incidents. In the CSE report, there's a couple of examples that they give of hacktivists. There's certainly money laundering going on for I'm going to say, significantly geopolitically sensitive issues, including Russian ransomware crews looking to fund their continuing conflict with Ukraine. But we've also seen in a number of cases coordinated cyber attacks. You've probably seen it in the paper in the UK about a small power generation company that was successfully targeted and knocked offline for 4 days. That in itself is part of the story. Certainly, we've seen warnings by CSE in conjunction with the FBI, in conjunction with something called the ISAC in the United States, or CISA, and they have all been putting out these warnings fairly continuously about threat actors who are looking to gain access, illicit access to organizations and conduct three types of operations. One is, of course, using that as a fundraising means, i.e. ransomware or data extortion. Two, a pivot to other groups and supply chain partners to do the very same thing. And three, using your equipment and cloud services to essentially use that for, again, the disinformation campaigns where they put out false, misleading information to essentially target the organization's beliefs. And that is becoming an increasing threat as we see the polarization going on globally. So now what's really interesting is I was talking about this back in, about 2015, 2016. And because I'm from Winnipeg originally, we know that we have all kinds of weather events that are increasing in severity, being that from blizzards, which affect the power, of course, and then right up to including extreme heat. And one of the more interesting sort of issues that were coming at us is that extreme heat is incredibly hard on on-premise IT devices. As you guys probably know, computers don't usually do particularly well above 25 degrees. They like to be cool. At 25 degrees is sort of the optimum operating temperature. Now we've seen, in May, in older buildings that have a massive steam heating source, we've seen temperatures in May reach 33, 34 degrees inside buildings that are still designed and built for long, cold weathers, and don't expect massive kind of shifts in temperature in the early spring like we've seen. So all of this combines to make the IT. So whether it's a cyber threat, whether it's a nation state actor that is looking to coerce and use your infrastructure or raise funds directly from it, or from the climate aspects, IT has become a really, I'd say, precious resource that we have to put a lot more effort into. And when you combine all of this again, we're really talking about the climate events don't necessarily defeat the business, but it only needs to deplete enough resilience that something else can, such as a cyber attack or follow on. We have a question.
Yeah, it's actually me. I wish I had a better question, but I wanted to just, sorry to interrupt you, Ian. I just noticed that you're sharing your full screen, and I think it's creating a little, I can see your Teams people on the side, and it's just covering up your
Ah,
slide, which I don't want it to do. There we go. Okay,
okay,
amazing. So
perfect.
sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all good. That's all good. So yeah, so combine the issues that I've talked about all into one, and it's really going to be a hazardous situation. And that's why we have to think about and discuss the idea of business resilience. Because it doesn't matter what attempts to put you out of business or what temporarily disrupts your business, we have to be prepared for that eventuality. So in that sense, we want to try and talk about, a governance posture and how we can start building that cyber resilience. So again, what we really need to do is identify someone that's going to have the responsibility for IT security. Now, there's great programs that the government has, which is interesting in Canada because they never talk about these great programs that they have. There is a Get Cyber Safe, and there are a bunch of recommendations that have come out from the government on how to secure your small, medium businesses. Who would have thunk it, right? But again, as long as you realize that you're responsible for IT security, but you can outsource that responsibility. And I work for a local company here in Winnipeg. Actually, I'm a co-founder of that. But I also work at an international level. And this is the conversation that is happening in all businesses, whether they're medium or galactic sized. Someone has to own the responsibility for IT security and the plan to actually move in a direction of that, right? One of the most important things, and you may have encountered this when you're dealing with your own supply chains or your own customers, you're being asked, do you have an IT security policy? And if so, what is outlined in that information technology or IT security policy, right? That's really important to have. It's one of the things that a customer and part of the supply chain due diligence that we're all being asked to do requires it. I know that I've been on the receiving end of countless cybersecurity questionnaires, all asking about different security controls that may or may not be present. And that happens with customers as large as Airbus, or if you're getting on to if you're getting into a vendor ecosystem where you're going to be representing another brand, Honeywell is a great example. You will be asked cybersecurity questions by that vendor in order to establish a relationship with. So it's now becoming even more important to kind of have your cybersecurity ducks in a row. And of course, there is a bunch of stuff that has been created, but only 22% of Canadian businesses have a formal cybersecurity training program. That was in 2023. Now, I'm hoping that number has gone up. But I think it's really important that the culture aspect to cybersecurity is the cheapest control on the list. And, basically it's the only one that's going to cover your employees, whether they're working, whether they're traveling, or whether they're even at home. And I've seen a lot of cyber attacks that started on the home PC and then ended up getting into, by various means, by getting into the actual business and organization. So that cyber hygiene aspect for employees is becoming increasingly important. And we're seeing that the trend, at least globally, is certainly a mandatory requirement for cybersecurity training for all employees. Just like once your business gets to a certain size, you need a safety committee. In my mind, it's absolutely the same philosophy. So Canada has developed the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity publishes a control baseline. And folks, this is really actually quite simple and elegant that they've come up with, right? So there's your 13 steps. And again, having 1 through 4 or 1 through 8 or 10 is all about moving your cybersecurity program, if you have one at your business, along. It'd be great to do all 13, but listen, if you sat down and really looked at your expense lines and your profitability, how what? Honestly, do the easy stuff and the cheap stuff first, okay? Because as you move up and you grow in revenue and you want to protect that revenue, enabling more cybersecurity, I would say, capabilities into your own business is the way to protect that revenue from it getting, cyber attacked, or from it, from having a one of those combination style of events that we talked about. So some of the most easiest things to do, and I do this with a lot of businesses, is develop an incident response plan. What are we going to do if, right? And you list out the most likely things that could disrupt your business, right? So no, don't get into the weeds on that, but what are we going to do if, we have a pandemic? Or what are we going to do if we lose physical access to our building? Or what are we going to do if we suffer a data breach? Having a plan will be the first thing that will help in terms of like calming everybody down and dealing with the situation in a reasonable way. And the wonderful thing about an incident response plan is you can once a year tabletop that exercise out. Like, hey, somebody just clicked on a link and now we can't get to the payroll system. Or now our on-premise QuickBooks is, we can't get to the data that's in there. So there's some really great stuff that can be done at a micro and medium level for your business to just get ready for something, rather than just sort of like trying to come up with an incident response plan, in the heat of the moment. Usually not good, because tempers are already going to be pretty raw. So I provide, a lot of kind of help and guidance to senior leaders and even business owners on that particular area. Employee awareness training, again, really easy to implement. Just one of those things that, you kind of do it, a monthly reinforcement of best practices. I myself, because I consult for 5 actual companies, I do 5 security awareness training as a result of that particular role. So I know lots about this and can usually find something that level sets for the business. And then, yeah, backup. I mean, again, if you're not running and you're not confident with your backups, honest to goodness, that is probably the easiest thing that you can turn on. Good MSP, or download some software, do your research first, or just ask for, recommendations. Hey, my business is this. We're mostly in the cloud, but we have some on-premise. Ian, what do you recommend for that, right? And again, like once you get to a much larger organization and you start looking at ISO 27001, NIST, or CIS controls, having a lot of this already there. So say you grow or merge, and all of a sudden, you've got some big name brands and they're asking you all sorts of questions. One of the most frequent questions we get is, what certifications do you have for your business, right? Are you ISO 27001, 2022 certified? Well, guess what? Starting that process early and getting these 13 or so controls in place will make that journey to ISO a lot easier and a lot quicker, rather than trying to start cold and go, oh, we need this, we need it in a week. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I've dealt with businesses that this is like a 1-year endeavor or a 6-month endeavor to get there. And it really starts with that number 1 step, which is, who's going to be the owner of cybersecurity? Because they're the one that have to agree to the policies that you need to draft in order to support ISO 27001. It's not just a bunch of controls, it's about governance. And I think that's, the key takeaway. So again, first 5 moves. What can you do today that will make you a harder target, right? First of all, 2-factor authentication. I know there's some conversations about this where, I don't want to put the authorization app on my phone. But look, many 2-factor authentication solutions now allow to do a WhatsApp message. instead of, or an SMS. SMS being not great, WhatsApp being considerably better. The best is, of course, the authentication. The Authenticator 2 now, where you just put in a 2-digit number when it prompts you, really easy, folks. And honest to goodness, you got to do this. This is the one thing that is eating a lot of businesses alive because of things called info stealers, which are pieces of malware that get onto your computer and they hoover up all of your session cookies and they hoover up user IDs and passwords from the system. And then guess what? Your email account gets compromised. I've seen countless businesses where this happens, and it's generally always because two-factor authentication was either disabled or not enabled. And this goes for linking using technology called SSO. So for instance, if you're a QuickBooks Online person, you want to make sure two-factor authentication is enabled to protect that information there, because technically that's your customers' information that you have there too. Backups that are offline, so cloud-based backups, for goodness sakes, use a completely different user ID and password for any cloud-based backups that you're using, because it's the Alamo, folks. It's the last stand for your business if you have to bring that data back and get back into business. So again, and then test this as well. This is becoming really, really important that you test whether or not your backups work, and it can be as simple as having, you know, I always like to say three backups are sort of the minimum. I like an offline one, so maybe once a quarter or once a year you do a local copy of everything over a weekend. You push that data over to a portable hard drive and you store that in a safe. And then you also have your daily backup going to the cloud. And then you can sometimes even get away with having an on-premise backup that is daily as well. So again, it really depends on how much data that you have that is critical to your business and what kind of approach you want to take. I know some companies very paranoid about this, mostly because of the unreliability of IT systems way back in the day. They are still like very paranoid about losing data. And ultimately, too, as a service provider to businesses, if you're tasked with doing backups, it's really a no-fail. I don't think many customers would appreciate if the MSP that they have been paying money into isn't checking to make sure that the backups are running on a regular basis and that they can be restored. Patching, this now is a critical part. And it's not just patching, it's a risk-based approach to patching, okay? Now, trying to patch everything in your organization on a monthly basis is a huge challenge for that business. Automatic is I think the way to go. I think the risk of a bad patch is outweighed by the risk of getting getting a cyber vulnerability. However, having said that, patching on the edge of your environment. So what do I mean by that, Ian? I mean my router, my firewall, that type of stuff, absolutely, 24 to 72 hours, because that's the major thing protecting your organization is a firewall. And it's governing and trying to make sure that the data inside your organization isn't going out to a risky place and that the bad guys can't, get into your organization by exploiting a vulnerability on that particular firewall. So if you have stuff that's exposed to the internet, you really need to safeguard it. And that applies, across the board. And I can talk more in depth. But I think the other aspect here is to look at a written incident response plan. I said it's pretty easy to sit down, have it written out, have, a copy of it stored at home, have a printed copy of it as well. And, of course, you can have an electronic copy. However, when you update it, make sure you're also printing a copy and updating it. And it's really good from a regulatory perspective to supersede the old one and keep all of the incident response plans that you've come up with, with the latest one on top and the previous ones on the bottom. And the reason I say that is it really shows due diligence, and it's the kind of thing in an insurance company that comes in to look at and investigate your data breach or whatnot. It does show due diligence. It's really, really something to have and to hold on to. And then, of course, the big thing to combat fraud is that payment verification by a second channel. Train your accounts payable, accounts receivable people. Keep them very aware of all the different frauds and scams. They're getting way more sophisticated now than they ever did because of AI. AI is really driving a lot of payment fraud and verification by a second channel. And by that, I mean really making sure that you're verifying the person on the other end of the line, because we have seen deep fakes where voice and video, as well as a whole chain of approvals that were generated, being attached and sent to the payroll clerk to change, an executive's banking information with a whole layer of approvals for that. So quite a huge situation with that and fraud. And then again, when you're going and talking with your insurance company, it's quite likely they're going to ask you to evidence a bunch of the cybersecurity controls that you have, especially if you're going for a bespoke cyber insurance policy. They will be looking for this evidence to make sure that they're tailoring the risk of your organization, and that is getting a lot tighter than it used to be, right? I feel, though, again, this is just a baseline that we're trying to get in place, with these 5 things that we can do to protect your business. Again, I feel like we need to up the game, though. We need to actually have some deliberate deadlines put into that. And again, this is really based on the risk to your organization of an impactful cyber attack and the amount of data you have. One of the easiest ways to compute what that cost is figure out what your average daily revenue is. And I know that's maybe not completely accurate, because some organizations probably do a lot of business, in the run up to the Christmas holidays, for instance. But keep that in mind when you're doing daily revenue, and include what your payroll costs are on a daily basis. And if you're idle, those costs, obviously now become something real that you can point at and say, you know what? We have this level of risk and we have this amount of cost if our systems don't work. I'm dealing with one of the largest producers in agricultural goods in the world, and their board agreed that they have 44 million pounds of risk. They want to reduce that to 22 million pounds of risk. And really oddly specific numbers, but again, they look at what the cost of downtime is in terms of production. And if you have shipping deadlines that have penalties attached to not being able to ship goods, and not having, a communications plan established, or I would say contractual language that allows you some flexibility, you could be on the hook for thousands of dollars of additional costs because of those contractual obligations. So really take a look at that. And then, of course, the big issue of partnership. I work with a very large MSSP that provides, SOC and incident response, security operations center, incident response, fractional CISO work, consulting work, all of that kind of stuff. But again, I'm working on behalf of an organization that has brought me in to deal with some specific issues that they are faced with, because there is a person or persons or a committee that says, yeah, we're weak in this particular area. We need to shore up our defenses. But again, the bottom line here is outsourcing the work never outsources the accountability, right? Yes, you can point the finger at a partner, but at the end of the day, the due diligence is really required on both sides, right? Again, trust but verify, going back to that old Cold War mantra from the Ronald Reagan era. Again, understand where your risks are. Put together, a risk-based approach to the cybersecurity, and really get on the same page with everyone. And that's where, kind of I work with a lot of organizations that are like, hey, what is our risk? And I'm like, well, it varies. Maybe it's intellectual property, maybe it's business operations. When you look at the Marks and Spencer breach and the Jaguar Land Rover breach over in the UK, which I dissected down on that one quite a bit, they had to be bailed out by the government, and to the tune of about $1.4 billion. And it's thus been the most costly cyber attack, I think, globally, for a large organization. And the problem with that particular cyber attack was the fact that Jaguar Land Rover feeds a bunch of medium and small, medium, and even large businesses having a lot more financial resiliency than a medium or small business. The result was that 1.4 billion was basically to stave off bankruptcy in the supply chain partners of Jaguar Land Rover. It wasn't, a payout to Jaguar Land Rover, in the sense of, cyber recovery. It was the fact of the matter is in a very politically sensitive area called the Midlands and the northern part of the United Kingdom. That is very politically sensitive because that is the Labour Party's home territory, where the majority of their success in the elections came from. So the government was put into a very awkward position, as to the importance of bailing it out. But again, this is uncharted territory, and based on the Canadian financial situation, I don't think our Canadian government is in a position to help large Canadian businesses to that level. I just can't see it happening. So again, get whatever, if you're doing your stuff in-house, collect evidence, right? Make sure that you're getting assurance of the technological approach and put it in the contract. Okay, make sure that you're comfortable and following best practices. And listen, guys, in the age of ChatGPT and Claude, it is very easy to come up with a fair contract that takes into account all of these issues, right? So start there and then get legal to kind of give it the thumbs up and take a look at it and maybe change some of the language that they don't like, because they're going to be way more risk adverse than you are. I would suggest you can easily put something together, and don't just accept what your MSP hands you. Make sure that you're looking deep into it and you're asking about how can I prove to my insurance company the services that you're providing. The other big thing is pay attention to what's going on, especially in your vertical industry. I do a cyber threat intelligence brief every Friday for my customers, where I go through the stories of the week and why they make sense. They're much more broad. They're more broad in terms of like the threat landscape because it's aimed at enterprise. But there's no reason why you can't, sign up for the cyber security alerts. Canadian government actually does have an alert system that they can email you about particular cybersecurity alerts. And they said they published 995 advisories and 25 alerts last year. For a small, medium business, glance at it, right? Because chances are it's not really going to affect you too much. But on one or two occasions when there's rampant fraud, a particular type of fraud, they will definitely put out an alert, and it's always good to circulate that as widely as possible. Right. So what are we doing here? What is the plan of attack? Well, first 12 months, right? Days 1 to 30, establish who's accountable. Now, I kind of made this chart for 12 months to get your house in order. Why did I say this? Because this is like extra work, right? It's not operational. It has operational impact, but it's not operational. It's not generating you revenue. And that's why I feel it's way easier to pay in 12 monthly installments, if you will, rather than upfront disrupting the entire business, putting in a bunch of new controls. I just don't see that realistic. I see that as basically being massive disruptive. And at the high level where I'm working, these digital transformation projects that have a big cybersecurity component where they're dealing with end of life cycle estates and things like that, they literally will unfold to months, if not years. So I would say don't, boil the ocean. You can move fairly quickly on that stuff. So the big W's. How are we doing for time? I
I
think
think we have about like 15 minutes left.
perfect. Okay, I will go through this fairly quickly. I really want to talk about loss avoidance because that's what we're all about here. And the most likely attack that you're going to get personally or professionally or at your business is fraud. That's what all the trends are saying, especially something where a supply chain partner or customer's account has been hacked and they start trying to get some sort of business email compromise headed in your direction. That can be as simple as rerouting a payment, right, to a different account number, to changing payroll data just before payroll is run, and those type of things. So again, be very aware of the attempt at fraud. Recovery, really, really important to focus on. How quickly can you get back in business? Have you thought about that, right? Again, making sure that, you are aware of what is going on in the industry, and then looking at what are my insurance options, because I don't want to have to pay out of pocket for a whole ton of recovery costs. I want my insurer to help with that, but the insurer is going to ask for your written plans, your training, your backups, updates, firewalls, multi-factor authentication, and encryption, or they're not going to give you a policy. Right? Or they're going to question the policy that they do have because you're not doing XYZ, right? So be very, very aware of that, and, protect your revenue, because I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is look at the horizon. So whether you're a small, medium business, and you're going to pass that on once you sort of reach retirement plans, or you're planning on selling your operation, you know what? Look at this number. 76% of Canadian business owners intend to exit within the decade, right? With more than $2 trillion of business assets expected to change hands. That's massive. And you want to make sure that your business is not suddenly disrupted, and that you have to start a process of rebuilding, right? That is really going to diminish the value of your business, right? And so I think, from all of the scary stuff that is out there, I think really what we've tried to do today is really understand and provide some baseline quick wins that you can do for your business to be a harder target, and a comprehensive approach that may take you a year, it might take you 6 months, but hey, how do you eat the cybersecurity elephant? It's really one fork at a time, right? So thank you very much for attending. And I want to just kind of do a shout out to Supply and our sponsor of getting me to attend.
I had a question actually, Ian, related to one of the slides that you had on earlier. You had mentioned a couple of terms that I was not familiar with, and maybe others are, but maybe I'm not alone. But you had mentioned this ISO 27001 and the NIST or NIST. What exactly are those?
So those are essentially cybersecurity frameworks that are kind of the evidence and proof, if you will, that you have these controls in place, and that they are, I'm going to say, effectively governed and managed. Okay, so as an example, it would say, do you have a policy for vulnerability management in your organization? Checkmark box. Okay, show me the evidence of when you patch. How do you patch? Do you get a monthly report? Do you get a weekly report? Okay, I have a policy, I have evidence. therefore I'm compliant with that control, right? And so there's a list of them. I think in NIST, there's over 300 controls, and ISO has 140. ISO is more popular in European and UK businesses in general. It's more of an international standard. NIST is an American standard. So if you're part of the American supply chain, you might be asked to be NIST compliant, right? And it's also called a CMMC in the United States as well. If you're over here in Canada, we don't really have a compliance regime, but many businesses, because they're doing international or US business, will pursue that ISO or that NIST framework. And it's not exclusionary either. If you're ISO, a lot of the controls map to the NIST controls and vice versa. If you're NIST, a lot of them map to the ISO controls. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions, folks, or just comments or stories, or I'm always looking for feedback. Yeah, I'm tons of fun to follow on LinkedIn as well. I'm pretty easy to find. Thornton-Trump, actually no relation. Okay, just want to make that very clear. That's the Dutch side of the family, the Trump part, not the German part. All right.
What's wrong with the German part?
Nothing.
Just kidding. As a German, I had to call it out. Ian,
fair enough. Yeah, but
no, I'm just joking. Yeah, I actually had I wasn't wondering if anyone wanted to share a story. I have a story to share about when I clicked on something once. I received at a company I worked at that was quite big, invested a lot into cybersecurity. The training pieces we get thrown at us a lot that nobody ever wants to seem to take to make sure we don't get caught in phishing schemes, etc. I actually got an email once in my regular email from the CEO of the company. No idea why he would have been emailing me, but felt really important that day. He sent me a message that I had to go buy a gift card for my boss. And he was hoping that I could go do that for like all the names were accurate. Yep. His email was showing up. There was probably a slight little difference in his email, but I didn't spot it right away. And yeah, sure enough, like I'm like, absolutely no problem. They had the name of my boss correct, all of it. So it was quite something. So yeah, of course, I innocently went out and bought this gift card, or I bought it through this link that they put on it. Like I'm fully owning this. It's embarrassing, but I did it. Luckily it wasn't a crazy amount of money, like maybe like $50. But I mean, this kind of stuff, I don't know if anyone else has any stories to share, but that was like a very embarrassing moment. The company was great about it, but nevertheless, like it was so like all the names are correct. Everything was so obvious. The email looked correct. It was crazy, but not totally out of the ordinary because we bought gift cards for people. So that was something that kind of stuck out for me. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced anything like that, but I'd love to hear it because I think those experiences are good to share.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I've seen. What is really interesting is many companies now have a policy that you don't update your LinkedIn to just starting with a company until you've passed probation. And the only reason for that is that's exactly the targeting that the bad guys will do. If they see that somebody's starting as an administrative assistant, right? They're going to be on that person right away, right? Absolutely. And so if you put in a policy, that administrative assistant after 3 months should probably be clued into how the company works and all of the people and ultimately be able to verify offline, right? Whether or not that's a legitimate request. So that's one of the things that a lot of large businesses are doing. I think it's a great idea, to avoid attracting the attention. That's goes into another area too, is as soon as you announce a merger and acquisition, that is like, the chum for cyber criminals, right? They'll be in there, they'll do the fake law firm, right? Hey, we have a judgment, you owe us money. We saw that in the wake of the pandemic with a lot of businesses because everybody was sort of shattered and the processes had broken down. A lot of fake demands for payment for invoices that went missing. that kind of stuff. So yeah, all of that, as soon as you kind of make a big announcement, and everybody's super excited to make it, don't get me wrong, but it's best to kind of delay and not put like specific information like, hey, Taylor McCaffrey is handling all of our legal matters in this massive merger that we're doing. Yeah, right. Like not a good idea to put that in a press release.
I don't know
Anyone,
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ian. Sorry.
I was just saying, it's if anyone, you know, wants to hit me up offline too, like via LinkedIn after connecting, I'm happy to, you know, kind of do a one-to-one and that kind of thing. Because again, at the end of the day, maybe not everybody is as comfortable airing their encounter with cyber bad guys.
Fair enough.
Well, with 3 minutes left, I guess we can let people go and get their coffee and head into the afternoon.
Ian, we just have one quick question in the chat.
Shoot.
Chat's also a great spot too. I think someone had a question. Any suggestions where to find good entry-level training in cybersecurity for a small business?
Yeah, so again, you can go to I can send the link if you hit me up on LinkedIn to the Canadian Cyber Resiliency. They have some good basic stuff to get pointed in the right direction.
Winter jacket because the windows had poor insulation.
Somebody's on a hot mic. Yeah, so that's probably a good one too. And basically, if you look to our neighbors to the south, they have a lot of good stuff, including a policy generator at the I believe it's the Small Business Administration in the United States. They have a cyber readiness thing there. You just can feed in the name of your company and it will start asking you questions, and then you can build out an information security policy. So there's some good tools online. I can send that too if you link into me, and I'll give you some of those resources. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the questions today. Thank you, Ian, so much for all that valuable information. I'm sure you have a lot to take away and think about. Definitely be cool to see how everyone goes to use this going forward. I think it's something that we unfortunately have to live in today and face the reality of. So
Yeah.
this was a really helpful start to, you know, kind of start thinking about this as organizations. Just a quick note, also just to let everyone know, you know, moving forward, we have some upcoming webinars. So September 10th, we have how easy it is for your customers to do business with you. And then September 23rd, you get what? So this is our Welcome Wednesdays, a little bit geared toward our newer members, but of course, everyone is welcome. Also great for our current members to meet some of the new people that are at Supply Build Canada as well and hear about what we offer, because I think sometimes we forget. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye-bye.